rainbows in the air. Yes, I know, 'cause I know for sure. Yes, I know, they sent me home. Yes, I know, sing us back your song.
So it is September 8th, 2017. Welcome to Let's Talk Native on the LTN Radio Network. This program breaks all the rules for Native radio. No buffalo speeches, no mystic healing, no special Indian prayers. We tackle the real issues facing Native people and look back at our glorious and our grave history. A tough look at where we're at now and look forward to our ongoing battles for sovereignty and autonomy. Let's Talk Native is produced in association with Iroquois Promotions on the LTN Radio Network. Streaming live from the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation and simulcast on the Gwe in Tandanaga. You can find us at www.ltnradionet.com. And of course, if you're catching us online and you want to see the show live, you can also see us on Facebook Live. So you can go to our Facebook live stream on my Facebook group page, which
we're
is
everywhere.
Oh, yeah, we're everywhere. We do it primarily on the Let's Talk Native group page, but then we share it, and my wife shares it, and some of you share it, and so essentially the live stream is made available everywhere. So you can check it out there. I am John Kane. I am the show's host and producer. I got Matt Hill on the board joining me in studio. And of course, I want to give thanks out to Kelly McMillan, who is our studio engineer, and I want to give our thanks and an acknowledgement to Jake Proud, who is in studio behind camera, off mic, running the cameras both for our Facebook live stream and for our YouTube channel, which is Let's Talk Native TV. We also post this show in a little bit more of an edited version on YouTube, and you can catch the show on our YouTube channel. I encourage you to not only check it out, but subscribe to the channel. We're going to try to drive some people to there so we can get a little bit more of our word out and the message out. Our whole focus here is to start conversations. Perhaps conversations that have already started, but maybe we can ramp it up a little bit. We can expand the conversation.
Fill in the holes.
Not only fill in the holes, but inspire you to continue the conversation. When you go home and you say, I heard something on the radio last night. I heard something online. I heard something that I didn't agree with, or I did agree with, or I heard something that made me think about things a little bit differently.
What do you think?
And that's exactly what we're hoping to get. Look, I offer my opinion. Matt offers his opinion. Our guests offer their opinions, and they're all valid, and they are all warrant hearing, because I think sometimes it's not about somebody else's opinion convincing you to change your mind, but opening your mind to the idea that there are other perspectives out there. So that's what we offer here. Perhaps if some of you change your mind, if some of you open your mind and realize that there are multiple ways of viewing some of these issues, then it'll contribute. It'll contribute to a bigger conversation. So that's what we try to do here. The conversation is the thing. And so if you join us on Facebook, you can offer your comments. And if we don't get right to them during this show, oftentimes we'll reflect on them in future shows. And it's one of our ways of interacting with you. So again, I encourage you to offer your comments. And
my signal's bad tonight. I can't.
Well, I'll look at it as best I can. Well, and certainly we can check it out after the fact. And the thing is, after the show runs, obviously we're live now, but after we complete the show, then it'll be the video will be up there, and it'll stay up there. And so your comments and our ability to exchange conversation goes on all week. So that's the whole point.
We'll be on there checking it out afterwards too.
So even if we don't respond live on the spot, we certainly will respond later. So I ask you to participate in the conversation, and probably more importantly than participating in the conversation with us, participate in the conversation at home. Talk to other people. Get people engaged in the issues. I can't impress upon you enough how important that is, and how much to the mission that this show even exists. So, all right, I gotta get right back at the governor again. Couple of things. He gives this impassioned speech about Trump trying to eliminate DACA and really trying to appeal to somewhat of the minority base. And here's the thing. Cuomo's a Democrat. and Democrats rely heavily on people of color to come out and support them. That's how they maintain, some leverage against, not just the white majority, but even the very conservative and even some of the, frankly, some of the racist white majority. So people of color are a big part of the Democratic base. Now the problem is some of these guys are just saying the words, and I know how condescending they are. So we're gonna play Cuomo's comments, and look, if you follow the show at all, you already know the hypocrisy from some of the things that he has said. But we'll play that, and then we'll get back to it. But the thing you got to keep in mind is not only does he give this speech, but then a day or two later, ups the ante on his battle with the Senecas over trying to extort money out of their gaming enterprises, and there's no other way to explain it. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about all of that. But let's start. Let the governor speak for himself, I guess. So go ahead, Matt, and give that a shot.
We have a federal government that is antithetical to everything we believe as New Yorkers. They have declared war on immigrants. By the way, the war on immigrants isn't against all immigrants. It's not against the white immigrants. It's against the black and the brown ignorance. KKK talking about real Americans. We're the real Americans. You're the real Americans? Unless you're a Navajo or a Sioux or an Apache, you are not a real American. President Trump is talking about DACA and rescinding DACA, which is just feeding the beast of bigotry red meat. That's all this is about. And Denny's example and my father's example says you stand up and you fight this fight not because it's easy, but because it's tough. You want to talk about North Korea as a threat, and it is. I'll tell you another threat. It's racism, because racism is a cancer in the body politic. It turns one cell against the other, and it starts the battle from within. And only Americans can defeat America. And these lines and these divisions and this racism and this bigotry is the greatest threat that this country faces. And New York's example is the exact opposite. We believe in diversity. We believe in welcoming people from all over the globe because we're not one religion, we're not one race, we're one idea. If you come here and you work with us, you join the family of New York, e pluribus unum, out of many one.
Well, there you have it. That's Andrew Cuomo, e pluribus unum.
I don't know if anybody's familiar with what show is it? Jimmy Kimmel? They do the drunk Trump.
Oh yeah, they just slow it down just a little bit.
That would be perfect for that one.
He already sounds a little
halfway
bit
there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's a good part of the way there. But of course, for those of you who don't know what DACA is this deferred action against early arrivals or something along those lines. It's a program that Obama put in place so that children who were brought into the United States from other countries without documentation, illegally as it is called, who really have no connection to the countries of their origins because they grew up their whole lives in the United States. This whole DACA program was about allowing them to go to school, do the things that that any other citizen of the United States would do, and be able to go through the process of becoming. I mean, they speak English. Sometimes they may not even speak the language from the Spanish or whatever the country is that whatever language of their country's origin is. But so that's the whole thing with Trump rescinding this Obama executive order. Yeah, look, it's racist. There's no question about it. He's trying to he's trying to do what his base wants him to do, be anti-immigrant, be pro-white, be nationalist and all that other stuff. So but when Cuomo goes after this thing, I mean, is he forgetting the racist stuff that he said? And I know nobody's calling him on this because, as I've said so many times on this show, there is a unique racism that is applied towards Native people, and there's a unique level of tolerance towards Native. That's why you have a football team called the Washington Redskins in the nation's capital. You can have a racial slur for the name of $1 billion sports franchise, and it's okay. I mean, that's that tolerance there. You can have the governor in New York stand up and say, well, the Senate a history of breaking agreements. And I'm paraphrasing, but it's essentially what he said. And he doubles down on that comment. And the media doesn't even question him. The media doesn't say, Governor, you're saying that the Senecas, Native people, have been cheating the United States or New York State? I mean, do you really want to, stand by that statement? No, they just let it go. He just says stuff and they just let it go. Doesn't, I mean, look, I post something. I post a description of what racism means, and somebody says, isn't that a little racist? But Governor Cuomo can say a racist comment, and nobody says, isn't that a little racist? I mean, they don't even ask that question. And then the ironic part of this speech is when he challenges these white supremacists about being real Americans. He says, unless you're a Navajo, a Sioux, or an Apache, you're not a real American. Which I don't. That whole line of reasoning doesn't make sense. For one thing, I don't consider myself a real American because I'm Mohawk. I don't even that label is something I just assume not have to bear. But the irony of his argument is that he doesn't say Mohawk or Seneca or Oneida. He so he's all this pro New York stuff, but he leaves the Native people in within the geographical boundaries of New York completely out of the conversation. Why? Because he's constantly trying to oppress us. I mean, they're still seizing cigarettes that are going that represent Native to Native trade. They are still scrutinizing every business transaction we do for money laundering, as they do it themselves, right? And of course, extorting and trying to browbeat and bully the Senecas into giving up revenue from their gaming enterprises, even as the governor continues to carve more market share away from Seneca gaming. So he not only makes these racist comments, but then he does the threatening ones. Wow, we're going to build a casino right next to yours, which is ludicrous. No, he's not going to do that. It's just an arrogant, vindictive comment that the same governor who is decrying racism is making towards Native people, towards Senecas in particular. We've been down this road. We've been down this road with his dad. We've been down this road with Republicans and Democrats. But you know what? The last Republican who sat in the governor's mansion and who had that title, we had knocked down dragouts on the thruway on 81 with his state police. But you know what he did? He said, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm reversing my position on this thing. I'm throwing the towel in. I am going to respect the sovereignty of these nations, and I am not going to try to impose New York State regulations on gas and cigarettes on Native territories. And he got elected 2 more times after that. So, I mean, when is this guy going to do that? When is this guy going to realize that trying to beat up on the Senecas, and look, $1.5 billion went to New York State. 400 million of it, which came back to Western New York. So over $1.1 billion just left the region. And that's a lot of money to Native people. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money to the Seneca Nation. It's not a lot of money in Albany. Albany spends $1 billion a week in Medicare. And that's probably gone up since the last time I saw those numbers. $1 billion is over 14 years. That's a drop in a bucket for New York State. But there's a point being made here. This is what Cuomo is fighting the Senecas over. It's about control. It's about superiority. So he makes these comments and being completely oblivious to how hypocritical his comments, as he's trying to make these comments, supporting immigrants. Ironically, and everybody caught it. His Freudian slip, as they're calling it, when he refers to when he tries to make a reference to brown and black immigrants, he says ignorance by mistake.
Too used to saying it.
Yeah, exactly.
Muscle memory.
Yeah. So for him, apparently, ignorance is a replacement word for immigrants. You can call it a Freudian slip if you want to, or a moment of truth, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, but look, the hypocrisy, and this is an irony. Irony is something where it just kind of makes you say, right? Hypocrisy just flat out. This is where the lie and the truth catch up to each other. And the lie is, the lie is Cuomo trying to make it sound like he cares about people of color. Now, there's also another place that Cuomo weighed in this week. He weighed in on how important it is to keep the Columbus statues up, because they are so important to Italian Americans. Because Columbus is a hero to Italian Americans. Now this is the governor of the state of New York. Now let me be clear, and I've said this on Facebook, so if you see it, it'll sound familiar. Columbus has nothing to do with Italian Americans. He has nothing to do with New York. He has nothing to do with the continent of North America. Never made it here. Never stepped foot. Hit a couple of islands in the Caribbean. Abused, raped, murdered. Learned that there was no real money, that it was going to be extracted. There wasn't enough gold to be extracted out of the Isles of Espanol and other places. But you know what? There's money in sex slave trafficking of 12-year-olds, of 10-year-olds, of 9-year-olds. So that's what he did. Columbus never made it to North America. He never stepped foot, not even on Puerto Rico. He never stepped foot on any territory that the U.S. claims as their own. But for some reason, he's been idolized by the United States. And in fact, they took his name, Columbus, and they actually created this fictitious character they call Columbia. Do you know what Columbia is? Matt, do you know?
No.
Well, Columbia is this female representation of the United States.
Is that the one that's on top of the Capitol building?
Right?
The statue?
Yep. So that's Columbia. It's and Paul talks about this. Britannia is the British version of represents England. Is this representation of America? That Manifest Destiny mural? Yeah, that's Columbia floating across.
One with the woman in the white gown or
whatever? They've dressed her up in red, white, and blue. I mean, this was this whole thing. This was the personification of America in the form of a woman.
I started thinking about that last night. That the statement that Columbus never landed on the continental United States. Well, who was the first explorer that did? And there's no mention of anybody being the first person to land on like the United States soil.
Well, yeah, for Britain it was Cabot. That's where the Cabot Charter comes from. Remember in the Doctrine of Discovery film they talk about that. So Cabot is the guy who was.
But they had Chinese and
but I'm saying from the European invasion. And no, I'm not talking about the Beatles. The European invasion that was. To the United States was actually led by a British sailor, by Cabot. So,
where's his town?
Yeah, I don't think he's got one here. I don't. Where's the state named after him, or the city, or the capital? I don't think. Yeah. Anyway, but so this love affair with Columbus, and actually, again, this becomes as much about Columbia, this female figure, as anything. That's why it's the District of Columbia. Columbia was actually a slang term for the United States, and that's so it was so there was Britannia and there was Columbia, right? These were these parallels.
Learn something new every day on Let's Talk Native. I didn't know that.
So you have these shrines all over the United States, in cities named after them or her, Columbia, South Carolina. Or Columbus, Ohio, or the District of Columbia. So you have these shrines everywhere. But what is the truth about Columbus? And the other thing, from the Italian American standpoint, look, I know you guys are really, really offended with the notion that Columbus statues might be removed. But he did nothing for Italy or for Italians. He sailed for Spain, for crying out loud. The flags that he stuck in the ground in the Caribbean, they weren't Italian flags, folks. They were Spanish flags. Everything that he did for the Queen Isabella of Spain, not for Italy.
That was his contract.
That was his contract. And you know why that was? Because Italy wanted nothing to do with the lunatic. Because what he was saying didn't make any sense. And you know, it didn't make any sense because here's a guy who was trying to sail to India, miscalculated by by an ocean and a half and a continent. So he sails across Atlantic, runs into land, not even close to India. He was actually closer to India when he left Spain than when he got to when he got to the Caribbean islands. It was closer to go to India sailing around Africa than trying. This is how much he miscalculated the size of the earth. There was going to be a Pacific Ocean and half of an Indian Ocean yet to cross if he had made it somehow, got past South America. So complete miscalculation. He ran into the Caribbean by mistake. I likened this thing because somebody said something like somebody made the comparison that Columbus was like Neil Armstrong. I said, yeah, he's exactly like Neil Armstrong. If Neil Armstrong was trying to go to Mars and ran into the moon by mistake, then Columbus is exactly like Neil Armstrong. And you know what? He wasn't sailing as an explorer. This was a speculative business deal, and that's why he felt it was so incumbent on him to return things of value to Spain. And if those things of value had to be native slaves, including sex slaves, then so be it.
That's why they're chopping everybody's heads and hands off for gold.
Yep, they said they had to fill a hawk bill or whatever that is. I don't even know what that is, but they had to fill this small container full of gold, and if they didn't fill it, then they would have their hand cut off, and then it would be strung around their neck. So as they walked away bleeding to death, everybody would see that how they were punished. They would be disfigured in terms of having their ears or their nose or some scarring on their faces. They would be disfigured in ways that are just, almost unmentionable stuff. And how do we know this stuff? How do we know this stuff? Because Columbus wasn't ashamed of this stuff. He wrote it all down. It's in his own journals, and in the journals of people that worked for him. So, yeah. So Mr. Cuomo is going to sit there and make it sound like he is so concerned about people of color, all while he's still endorsing this propping up and this idolization of somebody who really represents all that could be, the worst part of humanity in terms of not just the sex slave trade and the slave trade pulling Native people into it, but even beginning the whole idea of bringing slaves from Africa. Columbus has a role in all of that. And again, to suggest that somehow this is an Italian-American hero, look, there are many other Italians that you guys could draw, a connection to or a kinship to. I got an idea. Marconi, isn't he? That's Italian. He's the guy who developed radio. That's a great idea. There you go. There are plenty of Italian people, even Italian-American people, who have done remarkable things without having to have the baggage that everybody else wants to hide about Christopher Columbus. So then there's that. But now I got to get to back to Cuomo's battle with the Senecas. So in the papers today, it got announced or made the news that Cuomo was had filed the papers to pull the trigger on arbitration with the Senecas to try to get an arbitrated settlement on forcing the Senecas back to paying the state for a percentage of their gaming revenue. That's that was in the news today, and of course he's still saying the same things. That the Senecas are in breach of the compact. The only people that have been in breach of the compact has been the state. In fact, the state had to pay up, or in order to escape arbitration. The last time they paid off the Senecas $200 million out of what they claimed was their rightful money to settle that and to bail on arbitration. Big mistake as far as I'm concerned for the Seneca Nation, but they pushed through it. So now the compact is clear. The payments were only for 14 years, and the governor's trying to say that the Senecas are misinterpreting the compact. There's no language, absolutely no language in the compact that suggests payments continue past 14 years. The only thing that is suggested in the compact is that the compact will renew after 14 years for another 7 years to 2023. But there's no language in any part of that suggestion about the renewals. Even when they talked about the payments going through year 14, there's no asterisks, there's no reference, there's no arrows, there's no chicken scratch in the margins that says, but when we renew this thing, it'll continue. At what rate? At what rate is this supposed to continue?
Or same terms or nothing?
Yeah, I mean, because when it says 25% up to year 14, then what? So everybody's supposed to assume that it's 25? Well, it seemed like it was on a sliding scale, or is it up to 28% or 30% by now? Who knows? What's the governor saying? If
you go long enough, it's going to be 100%?
Yeah, eventually we own you, right? and of course, what all of this stuff misses is the fact that the underlying law, and I've talked about this on the show before, and I'll say it one more time, the underlying law that allows the state to have a role in native gaming is the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act. Now, that law does not give us permission to do casinos. It creates a condition by which the state and all non-native vendors can have a legal platform to be involved in native gaming. That's really what it does. Because it didn't allow gaming. We were already doing gaming. And in fact, a Supreme Court decision a year before that had confirmed that native people could do gaming. Acknowledged that we had the right to do it. So this law didn't give us the right. It gave the states certain opportunities to get involved in native gaming. But that underlying law says that the states are entitled to no revenue from gaming. And I'll tell you, non-native people, if any of you are listening to this broadcast, you have to understand that the state does not get paid for giving permission to the Seneca Nation. That's illegal. That defies the underlying law. And I saw somebody said that these payments are contingent on the authorization by the state to the Senecas to have exclusivity. And that's wrong. Look, we're at the bottom of the hour, so we'll take a break. We're going to play a little bit more John McLeod, I hope.
Blast from the past.
Blast from the past. Play a little bit more John McLeod. And when I come back, I'll explain why we're playing John McLeod. I didn't do that. So we'll do that, and we'll come right back.
I'm a blast from the past. Do you hear my engine roar? I'm a blast from the past. Just let that engine roar. And when you hear me coming, I'll have that pedal on the floor. Them northern lights are calling. They're telling me to come on home. But the howling of the highway just keeps me moving on. This 53 is winding. She keeps me rolling on. I'm a blast from the past. Do you hear my guitar play? I'm a blast from the past. She slides from Houston to LA. And when I stop playing, they lay us both away. I'm a blast from the past. I need new strength, she past. We both need rest before we bore. But with a little bit of love, we'll make it to the show.
Hey, that's the blast from the past from John McLeod. Hey, the reason I am feeling compelled to play John McLeod, especially that opening song, "Finally Got to Heaven," it's about him, his heart attacking him. And my good friend John McLeod had a heart attack this past week, and he's had some stents installed, and this is his second time around. That song was inspired by actual events. He did have a heart attack, and whether he finally got to heaven or not, I guess we can debate that. But look, we are seeing so much pain and suffering with storms and political strife and all this other stuff. And I hate to see anybody suffering. But when I look at a friend like John McLeod, whose music has really become, I would say, an important part of my life.
It's a go-to for the show.
Well, I mean, not just because the content, but even or the content of the themes in the songs. But I love the sound. Razor Wire, which maybe we'll play that as we go out. Razor Wire is a song that I have a connection with John McLeod because of our experience being on one inside Razor Wire,
one side of the fence.
Yeah. So again, good friend of mine, John McLeod. Look, I'm not one to say send prayers, but keep people in your thoughts. And when the opportunity comes to buy a CD, and he's got a new CD coming out, by all means, do what you can to support him. Trust me, he's got some pretty big medical bills he's got to pay for, because that's the world we live in. That we've advanced medical science to the point that you can save your life and ruin your life at the same time. So that's what we're experiencing now. So again, my thoughts go with out to John McLeod and his wife Caroline. I can't remember his dog's name, so I can't mention that. But but anyway, love your music. So happy to have you be a part of the show on such a regular basis. So hang in there, do what you got to do, stay healthy, be well, and look forward to your new CD coming out. So. All right, let me get back on Mr. Cuomo. So, yeah, he's pulled the trigger. He filed his official documents, requesting arbitration. I got to tell you, I'm cynical. I don't think he means it. I think he's still bluffing. People say, "Well, how could he be bluffing? He's he's calling for arbitration." No. Let's revisit. The last time the state tried this, they put a lot of pressure once the arbitration started to settle it outside of arbitration. That's what the governor's doing here. He's thinking that if he can keep flexing his muscle, if he can keep beating up on the Senecas, try to beat them in the public eye and everything else, and play politics with it, keep the mayors of Niagara Falls, Buffalo, and Salamanca from ever sitting at the table with the Senecas, that he's going to ratchet the pressure up and the Senecas will cave. Well, look, Deister, Brown, Smitty, you three mayors of these municipalities who are, cringing at the thought of not getting money from the Senecas anymore. If you're going to follow the governor's lead, then so be it. Be careful what you wish for, because the governor is not championing this issue for you. I hate to state the obvious, but at $1.5 billion that went to the state, $1.1 billion left the region. It went to Albany and whatever they do with it. Now, you can say, "Oh, well, it comes back. They did the Buffalo billion." Yeah, the Buffalo billion. Yeah, how'd that come back? Mired in controversy and pay to play and all kinds of other stuff. And $1 billion hasn't come back yet. And if it does, and over what period of time, who knows what'll really happen. In the meantime, Western New York struggles. One of a couple of bright spots that exist in Western New York. I don't know, Geico Insurance. I don't know. But Seneca Nation is essentially one of the biggest employers out here. And they pay well. They spend $1 million or $120 million a year in payroll. Almost $50 million of that payroll goes into taxes and state and federal taxes. So $120, $130 million in payroll. They pay $110 to $120 million a year in vendors, in contracts with local vendors, most of them local. 90% of them right here in Western New York. So those are job creators. Those are tax creators. There's revenue that local, state and federal taxes that are associated with those contracts. They sponsored everything from the Taste of Country at Coca-Cola Field to any number of concerts at Darien Lake and Bison's games, Buffalo Bills games, Bandits games. They spend millions of dollars in all of these areas. None of that has anything to do with revenue sharing. What's revenue sharing? Revenue sharing is 25% of what the Senecas were sending to the state would come back. So it's $6 or $7 million to Buffalo, $6 or $7 million to Salamanca, and frankly it is ranged from from 12 million to 20 million to Niagara Falls. And what do those municipalities have to show for it? Niagara Falls, because the first casino was built up there for the Seneca Nation, has received over $120 million in that 14 years. And they've just spent the money. The intent for this revenue sharing was supposed to have some benefit back to tourism and economic development. No economics were developed. No economy was developed out of that money. Salamanca, they used it to fill in the holes created by the fact that municipality exists on Seneca land, and it's an ever-shrinking tax base. So they just filled in their tax holes with this thing. Buffalo, I don't know. Buffalo isn't quite in as desperate a situation as Salamanca or Niagara Falls.
Buffalo is actually kind of using it to their benefit. They're developing that whole river, the Buffalo River. Or
well, I don't know what they've done with the money, but clearly what they've done is capitalize on the fact that one of the first investments in that whole Inner Harbor area was the Seneca Nation building a casino.
Well,
downtown.
even the nation did some what do you call it, capital
beautification programs.
Yep.
Well, again, that were outside of the revenue sharing.
Yep.
And the governor, trying to play tough guy and drawing lines in the sand with the Seneca Nation, what is it doing? It's keeping all of those guys from sitting at the table with the Seneca Nation. So you do so at your own risk. If you want to, drive your budgets farther into the red because you're going to line up behind the governor on this thing, the Seneca Nation's not here to bail you out anyway. But they certainly are willing to pay for any expenses that are associated with their enterprises, and they've offered it time and time again. Come to the table. Let's sit. Maybe there's some programs we can work on together that have mutual benefit. But none of that is happening. Why is none of it happening? Because of Andrew Cuomo. Because of the arrogance of this man. And and again, it doesn't just stop there. I mentioned it before, but he isn't just trying to squeeze money out of the Senecas. He's been doing it out of Oneida. He's been doing it out of Mohawk territory. And it's not just gaming. We're in a constant battle with the state of New York over any native-to-native trade. They have failed in decades. I mean, Matt, you were with me when we met with state senators and tried to get state senators to ask the question of the state tax commissioner. What is the policy on native-to-native trade? To this day, they've never answered that question. So what they do is they quietly go around and they seize, pull over a truck and seize tobacco.
They have by actions, but not by any form.
Yeah, they won't. They will not come right out and do what they say, as they say, promulgate their authority. They won't say, this is what we're going to do. This is the law that we're doing it under. And this is our policy based on our laws, regulations, and such. No, they refuse to do it. Instead, it's a crapshoot. So when people ask us, why is it so hard in native territories to create sustainable economies? Well, part of it is we're constantly at battle with the state. And when I say at battle, I mean literally in battle. We had knockdown dragouts when his dad was the governor. on the thruway. 92. And in 92, a case got brought all the way to the Supreme Court. It wasn't us. It was a New York State wholesaler who was challenging the state's authority. But everybody says, oh, yeah, the Attia case, that's a landmark decision that allows the state to tax Native people. No, it doesn't. That's what they say, but it's simply not true. So it's like what this governor's doing today, making these comments that are not founded in any truth. When he says literally that the Senecas have a history of entering into agreements and then having noncompliance issues. That's literally what he said.
Yeah, we got noncompliance issues, but it ain't us.
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't. Yeah, we have issues with you being in noncompliance.
Yeah,
that's what we have issues with. And you know what? And when the Senecas had an issue with the state, they followed the exact rules of the compact in terms of escorting money, in terms of notice of claim, and doing going into arbitration. And the state just ratcheted up the pressure. They made threats. Yet the mayor of Niagara Falls literally saying, "Well, there's a fire there. We're going to let it burn down. We're not sending our fire department over there. People might be gamblers, but they might not want to gamble with their lives." That's a quote. They might be gamblers, but they might not want to gamble with their lives by going to a casino that isn't going to have a fire department supporting them if they have a problem. That's literally what he said. The governor, bashed Senecas day in and day out. This is back in that, up to the settlement of 2013. And again, getting back to the underlying law, the fact of the matter is, the only way the states are entitled to any money is if they give something of substantial value in exchange for that revenue sharing. And the state has not done that. Because, I've asked the question, and nobody's been able to give me an answer. I've been asked this question on WBEN radio and in the media. Somebody please tell me what it is exactly that the state was prohibited from doing because of the exclusivity provision of the gaming compact. And the exclusivity provision is supposed to be what entitles the state to revenue sharing. It's supposed to be both substantial and quantifiable. So whatever the state conceded, which they claim was this exclusivity zone, had to be worth $1.5 billion. So the question is, what was the state prohibited from doing? Well, I'll tell you what they were prohibited from doing. They couldn't build casinos, not because of the exclusivity zone, because of their own law. There was the Constitution of the State of New York prohibits casino gaming. Don't ask me how they could be involved in giving permission for gaming when they were prohibited from it, but there you go.
Or regulate it.
Yeah, or regulate it.
Oversee it and everything else.
So the state couldn't build a casino in Western New York in the 15-county exclusivity zone. No, they couldn't build one. But you know what they could do? They could shave the edges of their laws a little bit and say, you know what? We can't build casinos, but we can put slot machines. They're not really slot machines, but they play just like slot machines. We can fill up the racetracks. And we could turn them into, in fact, we'll call them casinos, but we'll call them casinos, but technically they won't be casinos. So we're going to do this. We can carve into that market share. We can get gaming dollars even in that exclusivity zone and still not be violating the compact. That's what they believed.
I like your statement about the mini or the poor man's casino that lives on every corner and every.
Oh, there you go.
I mean, how saturated is that market where, there's with $1 and a dream, you are, in a casino, and I see our people in the convenience store scratching away, and and they got lotto tickets, and playing what's that?
Quick draw.
Quick draw.
Yeah, quick draw. Crack draw, as they call it.
Yep.
Yeah. They're playing. Their super lotto. They're doing their scratch offs. There's a whole range of gaming options in every convenience store, every grocery store, in bar, every place. I mean, I was at the grocery store today, paid my utility bill there, standing in line behind somebody getting paid off on their scratch-offs. And they press a little button, and it says, da-da-da, and they won $5. I wonder how much he paid for that $5. Yeah. But, yeah, so there's a poor man's casino on every corner in New York State.
Even remote areas, you could be getting chips at a remote
bowling alleys. You can play crack draw or quick draw. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. You can play crack draw in every bowling alley, every place. And of course, That's just their lottery. So, and I say lottery because these slot machines that they put in all the racetracks, they say, oh, no, they're not slot machines. We're calling them slot machines, but they're not slot machines. They're video lottery terminals. Oh, so I see. You couldn't build a casino, not because of the exclusivity zone issue, but you couldn't build a casino because your law prohibited. But you could make machines that look just like a slot machine. In fact, they are a slot machine. They're just programmed differently, so you can call them something else. Call them video lottery terminals, and then you can take market share away from the Senecas there and not sacrifice a dime. Well, until you had to settle that breach, because it was a breach. Because clearly the Senecas lost market share. But here's the thing: even if they could argue, well, we didn't breach the compact. Well, but what did it do to the value then of the exclusivity? Because keep in mind, the underlying federal law says if you're going to have revenue sharing, you've got to give something up. That's the state. That's Cuomo. You have to give something to the to Senecas that is both substantial and quantifiable. So it's got to be worth what you're getting. And it's got to be measurable. Well, what is the measurable value of an exclusivity that is not really, that doesn't really exist? Because you couldn't do casinos. That wasn't because of the exclusivity. That's because your law wouldn't allow it. In fact, at the end of that 14-year period, you guys actually changed the law so you could do casino gaming. Oh, and you can say, well, yeah, but we're going to do one in Western New York. You already got three racetrack casinos, and not to mention the Senecas have 3 casinos. On the Canadian side, there's a bunch of casinos. On the Pennsylvania side, there's a bunch of casinos. So you're gonna argue that somehow, and then where do you build your casino? As close to the edge of that exclusivity zone as you could, out near Rochester. And you know what? None of those state licensed gaming operations are meeting their mark. None of them are filling the coffers like the state said they were going to.
Except the lottery.
Well, the lottery is, yeah. That one makes all kinds of money. But you know what? The major investment in this whole idea of casino gaming, in the whole idea of trying to carve into the Seneca Nation or the Oneidas or Mohawks market share, it's carving into their market share because it's saturating the market. It's watering down that market. And the Senecas finally got to a place where they had a way to recover some of their losses by stop paying the state. And they're doing so because that's what the language in the compact. Governor Cuomo, you've got to back away on this thing because you look like a hypocrite, not only because of your DACA speech. I mean, in this claim that, and again, you gotta love him citing Navajo, Sioux, and Apache, as somehow the only legitimate real Americans. And knowing
that's the only ones you could remember from the movies.
Yeah. Yeah. Trust me, he remembers the Senecas, but he isn't going to put the Senecas up on a pedestal. He's too busy doing that with Columbus or somebody else. So
you got no room on the pedestal.
Yeah, no more pedestals. Crazy. I will depart a little bit on the statue issue here in just a minute, but let me just finish up on Cuomo. This is racism. Yeah, and while it may not be racism in the form that you're used to seeing from the right, from Donald Trump and white supremacists, when you see the arrogance and the condescending tone that Cuomo is asserting towards the Senecas, and of course the omission. I mean, you're going to talk about some sort of legitimacy because of of this of being indigenous people, indigenous to this land, but leave the ones out, and then give this whole description of what a New Yorker is. Well, look, we aren't New Yorkers. I'm one of the ones who say I'm not American either. Go ahead.
We got a Facebook question.
Okay.
Pertaining to the arbitration. The statement is going back to arbitration. What parties would be involved? For example, NIGC. Who does New York State get to represent their interest? Would it be the same arbitrators as last time? When the request from New York State for arbitration, who did the request go in front of?
Now, what happens is the Seneca Nation gets to propose a judge. The state gets to propose a judge. And then the 2 judges that they propose get to choose a 3rd judge. So that's how the 3-judge panel is decided. So it's got nothing to do with the previous arbitration. Wouldn't be the same judges necessarily. And in all likelihood, maybe different law firms and that kind of stuff. But no, I think the Seneca Nation can bring in whatever witnesses they think would be necessary. So NIGA or the Interior Department, and frankly, NIGA and any of the native organizations, USET, NCAI, they're all staying with the Senecas on this thing. So I think the idea of the Seneca bringing in these experts on the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act, including the provisions that allow for revenue sharing, the Senecas are in a very solid position there. Of course, the other thing that the state is trying to say is, well, the Senecas are claiming that their exclusivity continues, but the payments don't. Well, and apparently there is language in the compact that does suggest the exclusivity continues, and it is not unreasonable to say that the exclusivity continues even though the payments don't, because after 14 years, I think you can make a solid argument that the Senecas not only prepaid, but grossly overpaid for what the state was offering up as an exclusivity. Yeah. I think if the Senecas made a claim in arbitration
for a refund,
they literally could say, we think that the entire revenue sharing program violated the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act because it was not substantial what they offered up. They've never been able to quantify it. And if anything, over that 14-year period, what the state offered up as an exclusivity zone became worth less as time went on. All while we were investing $1 billion more into our gaming enterprises, building additional facilities, expanding, upgrading, and doing all that stuff, while we sunk $1.5 billion of our own money into our enterprises, the state just squandered their money and actually reduced the value of the exclusivity over that entire period. They not only first they reduced it by, by continue to expand gaming in terms of these racinos, and they did that. They did it, expanded over time, and then went so far as to change the state constitution so they could do Class 3 gaming.
Plus, they had a competitive advantage of taking the business model and whatever business highlights or whatever that they could pick and choose from, saying,
I mean, you talk about corporate espionage. These guys had unfettered access to the entire playbook that the Senecas had for gaming. Yep. So they got to learn how to do gaming on the Seneca's dime and actually got paid for it. So they got paid to learn how to do the Seneca's business, and then competed directly against them with so they somehow position themselves to be both the regulator and the competitor.
Yep.
And that's got some curtains coming down on it too. So no, Governor Cuomo, sorry, but you're just wrong. You're just wrong on this thing on so many levels, and the likelihood of you seeing any success in arbitration, and you know it. And here's the thing, you know it. You know that you're not going to have success. In fact, that's why there's already some hedging of bets. That's why even the paper says, well, if they don't get the response, they're still going to sue. Then what makes arbitration?
Well, what's the over under on Cuomo winning the arbitration?
Oh,
there got to be Vegas odds on this one somewhere.
Yeah, I wonder if it's legal to do gambling odds on that. But he's not going to win this thing. This is, and I'm telling you, I know the Seneca's got to go through the process because it's part of the compact. But I would make the state jump through as many hoops as possible on this thing, because I don't think the state. The last time they went through the expense, they named lawyers, they had the panel put together, they had and the winner in arbitration still has to pay for their own legal fees. You're not arbitrating, legal fees in this thing.
How much are Facebook ads?
I don't even know. I don't know.
Time for the nation to start putting up some of those, almost like a campaign smear type production, pointing these exact same facts that you're stating here.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's time to put up, and this isn't fake news, folks. We're not talking about fake news stories. Yep. I think it's time that I would love to do more of this kind of thing, and it's a shame that the Seneca Nation is not really stepping up in the PR battle, because one of the ways that you're going to get the state to throw in the towel, even on this arbitration thing,
is swing public opinion.
When the governor starts seeing his numbers failing, and I'll tell you, he's actually looking like he might have a real live Republican competitor in this next race. A guy by the name of John DeFrancisco in the central New York. I don't have great experience with John DeFrancisco. He was actually associated with some of the folks who were prosecuting me back in the day. But this is a guy who's got a pretty good record, and he's got good Republican credentials, and it might not be unlike the George Pataki who came out of nowhere to defeat Mario Cuomo. John DeFrancisco, Italian boy, good. You're probably gonna fight him over Columbus statues too, but who knows? All right, folks.
Too bad we couldn't get to your Columbus statue.
Well, who knows? Who knows?
Oh, you had.
The only other issue, and I'll say it real briefly. Ironically, for those of us who have gone to the state capitol, there is a statue right out in front of the state capitol, right on the grand staircase, below the grand staircase, of General Phil Sheridan, who's famous for the only good Indian is a dead Indian, and that's another statue right there, hallmarking history. When nobody even knows who the hell it is. But that's Phil Sheridan. And in case you're wondering why he's there in front of the Capitol, because apparently he was either born or lived in Albany at some point when he was a boy, so he's considered an Albany son. So regardless of the fact that that he not only played a key factor in trying to exterminate the buffalo, the American buffalo, but also trying to exterminate Native people as well. All right, that's it. Hey, this is we're gonna go out with Razor Wire, so we'll let you play a little.
Actually,
here.
this is a long way from Memphis.
Oh, long way from Memphis. Okay, I'm sorry.
About Razor Wire?
No, we're good. We're good. Long way from Memphis. John McLeod. My heart goes out to you. My thoughts go out to you. And my heart goes out to you. Yeah. Okay. All right, folks. That's it. So we'll see you. We'll see you on Monday.
Have a good one.
Scotland, and he found himself a bride, an Indian bride. Oh, Lordy, Lord, she was his